What is up, sexy people? It is Dave. It is Duncan back from Metal Epidemic for another album review. And for this review, Duncan and I have been checking out the new album from Dutch Blackened Post-Punk act Ainsoph. The band's new album Affection and Vengeance will be released on March 14th via Wills of Hades. So, 5 years ago, an entrancing piece of oral magic was released unto the ether, an awe-inspiring work of wonder and dreamlike gaze introducing Ainsoph into this mortal coil. Now the time is nigh for a new offering, one which is purveyed by the elements which enthralled the heart and soul in 2020, further heading into another level of contemplation of a feverish will to feel and disassociate, to exist and disintegrate. Affection and Vengeance is deeply moving in its capacity to evoke raw emotion from profound regions through its utterly immersive sound, pulsing beats mimic throbbing heartbeats, abreast gnashing riffs and licks, thoroughly moving with its plethora of shades and colours, as urgent as it is bucolic, burning with life as it serenely contemplates the void. The group's reverberations grasp a new apex as the eclectic, hypnotising wall of sound embraces the listener in a solitary pathway where variety is yet again a feature in the creations of Ainsoph. A dichotomy is not only breathing in the album's title, but is also felt in how the Dutch entity thrives through catchy, melancholic post-punk pastures, where the wondrous voice of Ivy sparkles and moves, or blasts beating black metal-inspired outbreaks, incurring in the experimental traits that enrich the audio palette, showcasing Ainsoph reaching new heights in intensity and climax. Affection and Vengeance stands as a thorough experience into the nadirs of the mind, body and soul, a sorrowful, pleasurable and certainly an unforgettable voyage over and beyond ethereal planes of ecstasy. The album was mixed and mastered by Peter Clues at The Void Studio.
Someone needs to pay that PR company more.
That was sexy, wasn't it?
Like that's how you listen. That's how you use the English language, ladies and gents. You know what wasn't in there once? COVID. I mean,
not.
Write them a check. Check, please.
It's an extra half star straight away. Yeah, I hadn't heard the previous album. Hadn't heard.
No,
of
I've just tried to find it on Apple Music. Other providers are available. It's not even fucking on there.
So the previous release is called Omega 5.
All right, Omega 5.
It's in Greek lettering.
Yeah.
And like a Roman numeral. I don't know. You decide. I didn't know anything about the band, and the kind of details on the band themselves are also pretty scarce / cryptic. They don't even have names; they just have letters. Yeah, there is that. But I enjoyed. I'd heard one of the singles. I was like, okay, this is kind of interesting. There's a bit of character here, so I was interested to hear more of this release and what they had to offer. From what I can tell online, the 2020 release seemed to do pretty well. Critically, there was a lot of positive reviews for it online. I did have a listen to the debut, and I liked it. I felt like it sounded like a debut to me. You could hear like there were some elements they weren't like fully there yet. You know, they were just kind of ideas that were still to kind of mature a bit. But you could hear what they were aiming for on the debut. I just felt like there was maybe bits of it needed a little bit more distinction here and there, but thought it was good. But I think from the opening of this release, I could feel like Ainsoph have kind of gotten much closer to capturing a sound with even more kind of personality and more range as well. I think they've definitely heightened certain parts of their sound and made it much more just a bit more potent, I suppose, on this release. I feel like the post-punk streak is like fully kind of embedded now on this release, much more than on the debut. And I think because of that, it's also created an album which has a bit more of a kind of retro aesthetic to it, I suppose. I think the production on this is fucking ace. Like, love the sound of this. There are certain instruments on Affection and Vengeance that kind of like take me back to that like 70s, 80s kind of time period. The guitars are just really kind of soaked in this real like nostalgia. Drum tones as well, quite vintage sounding. The kit sounds more like, has more of a kind of rock kind of mix and EQ than it does like a metal one. And for me, like just down to the production alone, I was much more engaged in this from the off basically than I was the debut album. I love the kind of era, the kind of time period that they've kind of evoked on this release. That heavier like post-punk feel and the almost kind of like 70s kind of vintage kind of rock feel. It kind of instantly put me in a happy place. But Ainsoph, they also have this other side to them, this other kind of part of their personality, which like kind of crawls its way through this album. And that's the blackened side of the band.
It didn't take long to get to it.
No, it didn't. Like sometimes it's kind of minimal, like just like slightly kind of peppered in to give the kind of post-punk side of their sound a bit more kind of bite to it. But then other times it goes all in and it just becomes this like full-on kind of black metal worship. But I kind of like the fact they gradually bring it into the album. The opening track doesn't really have any kind of blackened elements at all. It's mainly kind of retro, kind of rock / post-punk, loads of atmosphere to it. And then on The Beaten Path Made Flesh, which was actually the first single that I heard, they kind of start to introduce it. And it's a really, really welcome addition. As much as I really loved the opening track and the styles that it's at within, I don't think I would have been as excited about a full album of that. So when they weave it in, you know, that kind of really kind of like blackened kind of venomous side on track 2, along with that kind of like shoegazy type coating, it really just opens the door to allow the band to just expand their kind of musical palette. And they do just that. DEULE, like a timeless vacuum made flesh, goes deep into kind of like doom type territory. Again, it's spliced with this really kind of dreamy, kind of hazy side of kind of shoegaze, kind of wooziness. It almost kind of reminds me of like a band like Iris or even kind of King Woman. It's got that kind of feel to it. The melodies on that track are just phenomenal, both vocally and in the lead work. It's a really like intoxicating kind of sound. And 3 tracks into the album with all kind of like different variations of the Ainsoph sound. I was really excited to hear like what else they were going to do on this release. And over the kind of the rest of the album, they don't necessarily go like anywhere else kind of stylistically unexpected. But I feel like they give you more kind of variations on it. Sometimes they lean further into that black metal territory, just getting more intense in the tempo, like they do on Affliction. Or as the album goes on, they push some of the 80s kind of character of the album a bit harder. Call to the Fire really kind of stood out for me as a track with like a lot more kind of like 80s kind of quirk to it, and some of the techniques and the playing especially. Like there's some kind of like funkier kind of bass lines, which they reminded me of a band, an old 80s band called Orange Juice. I think their big song was Rip It Up, I think was the kind of big single they had. But they had an album out called You Can't Hide Your Love Forever, in the early 80s album. And the more kind of playful kind of bass work on this reminded me of that. The bass work, by the way, is fucking awesome on this album.
Yeah.
It's provided by someone called T, Just the letter T. But I loved the fact that like underneath like all the kind of the black metal riffs or the kind of doomy atmosphere, the bass is always really interesting. Just doing something different to the guitars to give you like more melody or just like a kind of counterbalance to the tone or the mood of the track. I thought it was great. Really enjoyed that side of it. Also can be said for the kind of sounds they used for a lot of the synths on the album, which really kind of continue through Vengeance, the interlude, and then Seven Mouths in the Neck, which is just like kind of dripping in this like post-punk atmosphere, big dreamy vocals, really nice track. And speaking of which, like vocally this album kind of surprised me a little because for all the kind of black metal influences that the band clearly have, there's not really a black metal scream on this album.
No.
It's almost completely clean. The vocals are provided by the letter I. It's a female vocal, and she kind of delivers a more kind of haunting kind of vocal sound throughout this release, which really kind of elevates the atmosphere of the album, but also will provide a hook here and there on certain tracks just to leave you with something to kind of replay in your head afterwards. Our tone is lush. Like I really like the tone, the range. Like she has a huge range, and doesn't really have any kind of limitations to our vocal ability. A little bit kind of here and there had like little moments of like Bjork or what's her name, Stephanie from Brutus as well. Like there's a kind of quirkiness in there at times, which is cool.
A little bit of Healthyliving as well.
Healthyliving, yeah, that's a good shout as well. Just a little bit of character, a little bit more personality that come from the vocal tone, which was cool. Do I think certain blackened parts might have benefited from something more aggressive?
Don't do it.
I mean,
don't do it.
I questioned it.
Don't do it.
Like, would it be better? I don't know. That's just a taste thing. I don't know. Sometimes I felt like I wanted it, but then I was like, I don't know. I'm not sure. Yeah, like this album, very easy to listen to. Like I gave this like a good 3-4 spins. And I think it's just way more interesting than the debut. I think they've ventured into areas of their sound that has only just kind of added more strings to their bow and made the sound more engaging, to be honest. I hear more of the band's personality coming through in this one. Plus it sounds absolutely killer. That production is just very retro, but kind of gothic in places in terms of the atmosphere. It's just drenched in reverb. The production is a real highlight of the album. It was the first thing that caught me when I hit play on this. After hearing the single, rest of the album was very good. Like really, like this is their second album. Don't seem to have been on the go for all that long, but very promising band. Very enjoyable album for me. What about yourself? What did you make of this one from Ainsoph?
I thought it was fucking great.
Oh.
So like right from the off, it transported me way back to our fledgling entry to reviewing way back in the day, early 2010s. It reminded me a little bit of Use Your Deluge by Beastmilk.
Yeah, definitely.
So like it almost instantly transported me back to that kind of, and they've got that kind of post-punk kind of thing, although theirs is much more apocalyptic than Ainsoph are actually bringing you, but like there was an instant connection there. I fucking loved Use Your Deluge. I raved about it like probably too much until Climax, their debut album, dropped, in which case I was completely vindicated. See, I was right, and everyone can suck it. Yeah, like musically it hit me with that, and then the vocals kicked in, and once again this is like another Inside Duncan reference where I get to squeeze a bit of David Lynch in here. Julie Cruz performs the song Falling, which was the kind of title track for Twin Peaks.
Right.
You will know it even if you've never watched Twin Peaks. It was freaking culturally everywhere. And if you listen to her vocals, that they have that, they're shoegaze before shoegaze. It's the weirdest thing. It's like early 90s, like 91 or something, 1990, 1991. And vocally there's a similarity there and the way that this is kind of just very dreamy, hypnotic, woozy, ethereal, floaty vocal works its way through. What I love about, and you said the vocalist's initial was I.
I think it was I, yeah.
Yep. What I love about I's vocals is that for all there is a serenity in the style. Well, you're talking about her leaning into scream. She doesn't do that. She does go discordant though. She goes deliberately out of key in quite a few bits where she hits a tone, which is actually, it's kind of vulgar to listen to against the music. And that's why I was saying don't go with the screams. I think she evokes the same sort of kind of, like kind of feeling by deliberately not staying in key. Interestingly enough, she never uses them on any of the black metal inspired bits either. She does them over, she kind of inverts it. Really, really smart technique. Musically, this is just fucking awesome. I love the production. Production sits somewhere between, it's a wee bit of Poison Ruin here in terms of that kind of lo-fi approach. But it reminded me, once again, of kind of early Beastmilk. So, some of the stuff a lot of the shoegazy sort of stuff we've covered recently has been benefited from really good production, and or the kind of retro style production, still very clean and very clear. You could be forgiven for thinking that this was an older album because of the way it has been produced. And I kind of enjoy that about it. It does kind of make me feel like I'm getting something. That's maybe like you went to like a second-hand music store and you've come across the cover artwork and you're like, I've heard of these guys and it's cheap. I'm going to take it home. You play it, you're like that. This is not my new favorite band. I love that aspect. Great call on the bass playing. The bass playing is just. But that's kind of post-punk. Post-punk bass players are like shit hot because punk bass players are shit hot by their nature. They're trying to do something that's just not, you know, like they're trying to do something else. But I think the guitar playing on this is incredible. Because a lot of this is, you strip out the reverb, you strip out the echo, you strip out the kind of chorus effects and all the rest. It's not just jingly jangly chords, there's lots of notation happening here, and I found that really, really playful and really interesting. As is the synth stuff, very underutilized but maximized. So we don't get a lot of it, but it's there purely for the uplift. Like it creates uplifting parts in a really, really smart way. Another thing I would say is the runtime on this one is sub 40 minutes, and it never really moves out with those sections of kind of blackened blast. Tempo wise, all the songs are around the same BPM. They don't really deviate from that. It's not a boring album at all because of the movements in the tracks. Those cadence movements just actually keep you fully invested. I love the inclusion of Vengeance. Like what I love about you get Affection into Call to Fire and Vengeance is a kind of group of almost 3 tracks, like kind of weaving their way through into this instrumental which opens up to 7 Miles in the Neck, which is just a fucking great song, and closes super strong on Purple Curtains. I love that as a closer. Like I'd never heard of these guys before. I'll be honest, I had Germany as the country for them because I don't read the press statement, although I wish I had, because when Dave was reading it I was like, this is fucking awesome. I had them from maybe that part of the world, mostly because, and you mentioned it before, there kind of is a kind of post-punky Brutus sort of thing going on here. I would love to see these guys live, like in a club, just these guys going. It would be fucking incredible. And also like the techniques and the sound doesn't necessarily. It doesn't make them fall into the trappings of a lot of what is going around in shoegaze at the moment. I think we're at that tipping point now where there's just a lot of it, or a lot of bands that are inspired by or using it, that some of those bands become almost interchangeable. The way Ainsoph is put together is instantly recognizable to me. So I thought this was a fucking great album. I spun it loads. So this is one that I would say easily about 6 or 7 for me. Because it's not long either. No. It's not long, and you good set of headphones. You are just in the album. There's so much reverb. There's so much space to be in it's like putting on it's like VR goggles for your ears. You know what I mean? It's just absolutely brilliant. So yeah, that was brilliant.
Nice. Okay, so scores for Ainsoph, Affection and Vengeance. Thoroughly enjoyed the album. I think the production for me was like my favorite thing. I thought the production of this was fantastic. Just really that kind of retro character that it has. Just, and as you said, it could be like an album from, you know, a couple of decades ago.
Same way I felt when we spun Poison Ruin, and I was like, is this a remaster? When did this come out?
I kind of got that feeling as well. It kind of reminded me of the band were called Vanishing Kids. We did like a year or two.
Yeah.
They had a very vintagey. They were more kind of on the doom side, but a very vintagey kind of production that had the same kind of quality as this. There's a lot of kind of influences that will kind of pierce through on this. You'll be like, oh yeah, that will kind of remind you of certain things. But I definitely feel like this one has moved forward in terms of kind of creating a more of a kind of original sound for Ainsoph. Thoroughly enjoyed it. 4 out of 5 for me. I'll definitely come back to this when I'm looking for something a bit more kind of chilled and moody and atmospheric. Lots and lots of good stuff to check out on this one. What about yourself? What are you thinking?
I'm coming in a 0.5 higher than you. I'm giving this a 4.5. I thought this was fucking great.
Nice. 4.5. Ainsoph, Affection and Vengeance out on March 14th via Wolves of Hades. Links below to the band. There's a Bandcamp pre-order, and I'll put in one of the singles so you can check out as well. Let us know what you think. Happy to hear your thoughts and opinions on the album. That is a review. Thank you for checking it out. Much appreciated. We'll be back with another review very soon. But until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.